Welcome back to Castle Maximo, where this time we're going to head to the Great Escape, which is my favorite level of Castle Maximo. If you remember from the Hub World video, it does have 3 skeletons surrounding it, but when we jump up there we can just hit the level immediately and ignore them entirely. They can't hit us while we're teleporting after all. You know what occurs to me? I think this is the first run of Maximo where I've used the spinning attack for its intended purpose. At least 3 times. Usually I just use it to enter a level. I've also never really questioned why there was money inside these coffins. I guess that's a good way to hide it, but who would Akili be hiding it from? Maybe it's just an evil overlord thing, like an aesthetic choice. As soon as this level starts, as with many levels before, we want to turn around, because there are secrets behind us. A key, a lightning sword, and even some armor. There are also a lot of enemies, but they don't usually spawn together, so it's no worry. It's been a while since we've had a lightning sword. I'm not sure we've had one since I picked one up in the Netherworld for like 2 seconds before grabbing Armageddon. I'm not sure if we're going to keep it very long this time either, because I know there's a fire sword later in this level. And by later, I mean fairly soon. A surprisingly large amount of this level takes place indoors, but this is a very indoorsy world, since we are in a castle after all. The Dutch angle is much more noticeable in this level than in any of the ones in Hell, because things already looked kind of askew in that world. As with every Dark Knight from this point on, we're just going to spam the Ring of Pain until he goes down. He doesn't even get a chance to attack if we do it right. Oh yeah, I almost forgot to mention. I said the elemental swords work better against some enemies. What I meant by that was the fire sword won't work very well at all against certain enemies in Hell. And that's really the only instance I can think of. I'm sure there are others somewhere, but I've never taken much notice aside from in that specific instance. Lots of money in these coffins. This level likes to put enemies on top of or on the steps of staircases sometimes. This is of course because they're betting on you trying to ascend the staircase immediately and running straight into them where you don't have any room to fight. These lava pits are really the most difficult platforming in this entire level. The final world as a whole, not so much about platforming as it is combat, which is to be expected again because we are assaulting a castle. Our own castle, in fact. But it is retribution time right now. Or it will be very shortly. It's a good idea to wait until they lift their axes before you run through there. Trying to jump over them while their axes are down doesn't work out so good. It occurs to me that these lava pits are actually easier to navigate than the ones from the graveyard. They're very straightforward and you can always see exactly what you want to, which is to say straight ahead. I definitely don't remember that guy being a mimic. Lightning Sword is certainly coming in handy for how much I trash-talked it. Well, not exactly trash-talked it, but let's be honest, it wasn't very useful. Until now. This chest, of course, contains armor. We're going to end up using quite a bit of it on the Dark Knight ahead. It works about as well as our Ring of Pain, but maybe slightly faster. Yeah, that was probably a bit faster. These moving spiky doll-like things, these guys, will still knock us over while we're invincible, as you're about to see. Or not? Oh, good for me. Anyway, here's the fire sword as I promised. And we're about to head straight into another extra area. This time instead of a bomb enemy, some skeletons spawn behind the Dark Knight. But we can push the skeletons back with our Ring of Pain, unlike the bomb enemy. This extra area looks a lot like the one at the beginning of the stage, but this time we have a fire sword, so we're going to spam the projectile attack at everyone. Because I don't feel like getting hit. But as long as we don't lose a whole one of our health bars, we'll be fine. because back in the main hallway there's another door that has a chest with armor in it, which means more invincibility for us. The main reason to come back here is because there are 2 more keys. I believe the Dark Knight dropped one, and there's one over here in the corner. There's also some extra spirits and junk, but we really don't need any more Grim coins, do we? But this is a good opportunity to discuss something. The reason we get Grim coins from the spirits is because we're getting the spirits for Grim. It's like proof that we're getting work done. And that's why we get Grim coins for it, because he knows we're doing our job. I mean, I'm sure there's a way to poke holes in that, but I like when game mechanics like that have a story reason. I also think it's funny that the Midas shield collects spirits. I guess it would make sense with the player's expectations, but the Shield of Midas also doesn't pick up things like health potions and extra lives. But health potions and extra lives are also meticulously hidden, so that makes sense as well. Right in this doorway, there's a health potion and a chest which contains more armor. It also contains an ice sword, but I run right past it. And by the time I remember I left the ice sword back here, it's too late to grab it. But that's okay, because we get a much better hidden sword very shortly. I was more determined to make use out of my invincibility than to grab the ice sword, because I knew that there was something better up ahead. And you know, enemies on steps can be a pain. Right here I go back to try and nab the ice sword, but of course it's already gone. I was busy for a while, at least 20 seconds. We can skip most of this section by coming up here and jumping over a large portion of it. We're also going to run past the enemies up here, because I don't want to get knocked down there. And if we're very careful about how we position ourselves across this balcony up here, we can get ourselves another key, and you know what that purple glow over there means. We now have Armageddon back, which means the rest of this level should be a piece of cake unless I really screw up. Even though we skipped the first half of the hedge maze, there is yet more hedge maze inside the slot gate. I did memorize a path through it. It's probably not the most efficient path, but it's the one I'm most used to. This is one of the only parts in the game where I would say the camera is a problem during something genuinely important. It's very difficult to look around these tight turns. Sometimes the camera swings the exact opposite direction you want it to. You can always listen for enemies coming towards you, but I would still like to be able to see them, especially in a game this fast-paced. I haven't mentioned it, but the right analog stick is not used for camera control in this game. You tap the L trigger in order to center the camera behind you. I know that's a big turnoff for some people, but I actually prefer that to free camera movement for games like this. It gives me a lot more time to actually focus on what's happening directly in front of me. I have to dedicate less brain power to moving the camera around. And right up here past this plant and the skeleton is your regularly scheduled onslaught of enemies, with a wizard this time. And in spite of my best efforts to shoot the wizard with Armageddon, it didn't work out. So now we're in a little bit of trouble. But you may have noticed that even though things went kinda bad just now, we picked up the lightning shield again. Which means in addition to Armageddon's projectile death, we now have another kind of projectile death. So, that's good. That's only a good thing. I suspect we will be using this shield a lot in the next level.